We're just a week out from the Australian GP, the big season opener at Albert Park. The rumor mill, confirmations, and really the talk around the paddock has already given us a hint of upgrades coming to Australia. We're going to dive into a team that's towards the bottom that is getting a big percentage of their car for Australia, and one of the top four that is getting minor tweaks through the whole season, and the importance of working upon this to get its full potential out of its car. There's a lot of things to expect. There's also rumors as well, which I will cover. The flexing of the rear wing on a couple of teams is definitely going to be a topic for today's video, and why what we might see in Australia might not be accurate for the rest of the season. So if you're new here, go ahead and subscribe. It would mean the world to me. Got plenty to cover for 2025. But let's talk about a bit of upgrades and diving into this video on every team's car. As I stated before, the rear wing flexing is going to be huge here because there will be some tests done, and we've already seen footage of the McLaren showing off another creative way of a bit of mini DRS. I think these innovations that McLaren has pulled off both last year and this year have been extremely cool. It's unfortunate that the FIA is obviously looking into this. I wish it was something that was allowed on each team, and we could really see a development path from all these teams exploring all these intricate parts of the Formula 1 car. Now, they're definitely going to probably put in a few tweaks before going to Australia because of all the footage that's been shown, so they're not hit with anything come that race weekend. That corner edge is where the mini DRS is happening. Right now, there's a rumor that Ferrari has it as well. And this all came to light from Pierre Wache from Red Bull, saying the teams were still abusing this in testing. And you gotta give the man props. He caught on to it pretty quickly, mentioned something, and the FIA is now having stricter tests at Australia, which definitely could skew a bit of the performance. I don't think this is gonna be the main reason as to why McLaren is either at the top or falls down a bit in pace. Same with Ferrari, but any little thing they can gain a benefit out of, Red Bull is going to go at it. And impressive work to get a look at it and get the FIA right on those teams' tails. Talking about upgrades, the first one's probably going to shock you, but Sauber did not have their full car prepared for testing, and it was only 80% of the car that we saw in Bahrain. Now, they are the key team to focus on here with upgrades coming into Melbourne. As it is the first race of the season, we're not going to see overhauls here. Most teams are probably going to bring the exact spec they had in testing, as they have the most data on that car. And changing too much of the car now just makes no sense. You really don't know the full potential. Their CTO, James Key, who's also worked for McLaren before this, has said we only saw 80% of the new car and the rest is coming to Australia. Now, what can the rest really mean? We don't have confirmation of what these details are, but just looking at the car, it's definitely an outlier to everybody else on the grid. Yes, they have the overbites. They have tweaked a couple of things to look like other cars, but the side pod design and how they're generating downforce is definitely different. They've definitely got some weird curvature there done to that side pod shape, and a floor upgrade they brought last year in Vegas really helped the team out. But man, the 2025 testing looked bad. So unless 20% of this car literally means changing pretty much everything to the rear end where the car was really struggling, I still expect them to be 10th. But this track is weird. It really relies on teams having a good front end. The rear isn't as important here. So we could possibly see a better Sauber. I'm really interested to see whether they revise the floor, the side pods, and what they do to boost the downforce, because the car's balance was just all over the place. Even with James Key saying it was a pretty okay testing, which is quite shocking, but I don't think he's really going to pull out too many bad statements. It was really Nico Hülkenberg that stood out there and said the car was just not a good baseline from the start. Diving into Mercedes, now this is a team that's fighting for victories already from the start, at least if we look from testing. The front end of the car was good, rear end stability seems to be the little bit of trouble that every team has. They ended up locking up into certain corners a decent amount of times, but I feel like out of all the teams, the balance of the car was there from day one to day three, and really the technical director over there, James Allison, has done a good job of reviving the team from its previous cars in 22 and 23. He's already mentioned that the upgrade path for the W16, especially in the beginning of the year, will have small but meaningful tweaks that are coming. This has been the classic Mercedes method, at least in this regulation period, with the exception of 22. So it's not going to be flashy, but it's going to be effective. That's where they ended up gaining most of their time in 24. And testing definitely showed promise. Yes, it did have a little bit of those W15 problems like the rear end instability, and tire wear lingered, especially on Kimi Antonelli, who I believe is probably going to have the same problem as Oscar Piastri. As we get more footage of him, I'm going to wait for Australia and China as well. I want to talk about his driving style because it's pretty extreme, it's really cool, and I want to make it very in-depth. I could cover it now, but I feel like it's much better we see a couple of GPs under the rookie's belt, and then I will make a full video. The rear suspension was tweaked heavily for all Mercedes cars, so it'll be interesting to see now in the heat whether or not this problem persists, or was it just a testing thing where they were trying certain setups. The car did have a bit of issues in the low speeds. There isn't too much low speed in Melbourne with the exception of Sector 3, but a lot of time can be found there, and Mercedes really has to get on top of this car quickly, and they're really wasting no time bringing some stuff for the W16. Red Bull is another team that I wanted to mention very briefly in this video, as the team did have a front wing upgrade and they tested a floor in Bahrain. The floor did not perform to expectations, and the front wing did give them a little bit of stability. Max has now gone on to speak about the car and pretty much say exactly what I said in everything that we learned for testing, that the car still has that mid-corner understeer, and that's where most of the problems arise. He says it's a better balanced car. It feels a bit better than the 24 car, but not enough was done during the winter. And there are rumors from Pierre Wache that there could be parts coming here. I expect it to be minor tweaks like the Mercedes. It's really only Sauber that's going to bring a big upgrade, which is quite shocking in the first race of the year. But if you didn't finish the car, I guess it's going to be finished now in Australia. So expect correlation problems there as well. They did end up ditching this floor, Red Bull, in the testing, and went back to their safer spec that they gained the performance from during the winter. So definitely a team to keep an eye on. They went for that same approach they had from 22 to 23 to now 24 to 25. And doesn't seem to be paying off, at least in the start. A lot of rumors going around saying that team is not going to be number one. Max believes that as well. And I tend to believe that this is not going to be the top team right now. It really does look like the team in orange. For the rest of the grid, nothing has been confirmed. There's just some rumors about some small tweaks. Ferrari has been in the simulator, maybe expect something to the rear wing, but they were running a bit of medium low. This track requires that type of rear wing. As there's more DRS zones, Sector 3 is important to have some downforce so you're able to go through those high speeds very quickly and efficiently. But as these cars generate so much downforce from the floor, the rear wing plays less of importance each year we go into these regulations, and this is obviously the last. No team really played around with too much high downforce. Rain is rumored, but that would be a big risk to go for a rainy setup in only a rainy qualifying. So out of the midfield and even these top teams with the exception of Red Bull and Mercedes, I'm going to cover the minor tweaks we end up seeing on Thursday. I'm really excited for it to finally see our first upgrades of 2025. And I really would like to see what Sauber has done to the car because it's so odd looking, but it intrigues me. I think it's a decent looking car with the exception of its livery. So let's see what Sauber's mystery rest of the car is, Mercedes tweaks, and the minor updates kicking off 2025. Expect a lot to be done in the beginning of the year, as it is the last regulation period, so I'll be covering it all, don't you worry. And I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please give it a like, subscribe. It would mean the world, and peace.